The sound of car tires screeched softly against the marble driveway of the mansion. Two old figures stepped out of a dusty taxi, carrying a small, worn-out bag between them. Mama Ajani coughed as the dust rose into the morning air, pressing her hand on her chest. Her husband, Baba Ajani, held her steady. Their clothes were clean but faded, smelling faintly of the long journey from their village in Kwara State. Before them stood a house, so large it looked like a hotel, shining glass walls, tall gates, flower beds trimmed like in the magazines. Mama Ajani smiled with weak pride. "My son built all this," she whispered, clutching her wrapper tighter. "God has done it for us." Baba Ajani nodded. "Our boy made it." All those nights of fasting and farming paid off. They didn't know a housekeeper was already watching from behind the gate camera. Within seconds, the automatic gate slid open with a low hum. A young woman in uniform came out, her expression stiff. "Good morning. You're looking for who?" Mama Ajani smiled warmly. "We are looking for our son, Ajani. We are his parents." The woman blinked. "Parents?" Her eyes scanned their old shoes and the dusty bag. "Please wait here." She picked up her phone and whispered quickly before returning. He said, "You should wait by the back entrance." Baba Ajani frowned. "Back entrance? But this is our son's home now." Before he could finish, the woman had already turned, leading them through a side path beside the mansion. They passed glittering cars and fountains that sparkled in the sunlight. Inside the living room, the young billionaire, Ajani Alawale, stood in front of a mirror, adjusting his gold wristwatch. He wore a white designer shirt and Italian shoes that shone brighter than the floor. His phone buzzed. "Yes, Teo, the investor's dinner is tonight. Make sure the chandelier in the main hall is cleaned." He paused as he heard footsteps behind him. "Sir," said the housekeeper quietly, "there are two elderly people at the back gate. They said they're your parents." Ajani froze. His hand stopped midway to his collar. Slowly, he turned. "What did you say?" "They said they are your parents, sir." Ajani's eyes narrowed. "Did anyone see them come in?" "No, sir. I told them to wait by the back entrance, as you instructed." He exhaled sharply. "Good. Don't let them through the main gate. Bring them in through the kitchen corridor. And," he lowered his voice, "make sure the guards don't talk." The housekeeper nodded, hiding her confusion. 5 minutes later, Ajani walked toward the kitchen. When he saw the old couple standing there, dusty and smiling, his jaw tightened. "Mama, Papa, you came without calling first." Mama Ajani's eyes glistened. "We wanted to surprise you, my son. It's been 2 years since you visited. We heard you built this mansion, and we said, why not come and bless it with our prayers?" Ajani forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You should have called. I have guests coming today." Baba Ajani chuckled softly. "Guests? Ah, that's good. Let's meet them. We will tell them how stubborn you were as a boy who refused to stop reading your books, even when your lantern burned out." Ajani's smile vanished. "Papa, please, not today." He looked around nervously. "I have important people coming. People who won't understand stories like that." Mama Ajani tilted her head. "Stories like what?" "Never mind," he said quickly. "Listen, you'll stay in the guest room downstairs. It's comfortable." Her face brightened for a second, until she saw the direction he was pointing. The guest room was near the kitchen, far from the glittering staircase leading upstairs. "But my son," she said softly, "the guest room? What are the fine rooms up there?" Ajani sighed impatiently. "Mama, those are for guests. Important ones. The downstairs room is easier for you to reach, and it's quiet. Please." The tone in his voice made Baba Ajani glance at his wife. "It's fine," he murmured, holding her hand. "A room is a room." They followed the maid into the small guest room. Though neat, it felt nothing like a home. Cold air conditioner humming, no windows open, no warmth. As the maid left, Mama Ajani sat slowly on the edge of the bed, her hands trembling. "Did you hear how he spoke to us?" she whispered. Baba Ajani closed his eyes. "He's busy. He's a big man now. Let's not shame him before his people." But her heart ached. This was the same boy who once slept between them under leaking roofs, whispering, "One day, I'll buy you a real bed, Mama." Later that evening, laughter echoed from the upstairs balcony. Ajani's friends had arrived. Men in suits, women in glittering gowns, all sipping wine and taking selfies. Wow, Ajani, your home is paradise, one man shouted. Ajani grinned proudly. Only the best for the best. A woman pointed toward the kitchen hallway. Who are those old people I saw earlier? His face stiffened. Oh, them? They're just relatives from the village. They'll leave soon. The group laughed lightly and returned to their wine. But behind the curtain, Mama Ajani stood quietly, unseen, holding a small tray of food she had cooked herself, her son's favorite yam porridge. She'd hoped to surprise him with it, the way she used to when he studied late at night as a poor student. Her eyes filled with tears as she heard him call them relatives. Still, she walked forward, wiping her face. Ajani, she said gently, stepping into the light, I made your favorite. He turned sharply, panic flashing across his face. Mama, not now. Everyone turned to look. Silence fell. The rich guests stared in confusion at the frail, old woman holding a steaming bowl. One of them whispered, Is that his mother? Ajani's face burned. Mama, please go back to your room. I'll come later. Her hand shook, spilling a bit of the food on the floor. But my son, I said go. Her lip quivered. She turned slowly and walked away. The laughter that followed felt like knives in her back. Hours later, after everyone had left, Ajani walked into the kitchen, loosened his tie, and poured himself a drink. His reflection on the glass fridge stared back at him, full of emptiness. He heard a weak cough behind him. Turning around, he saw his father standing in the doorway. Ajani, Baba, Ajani said quietly, we did not come to embarrass you. We only came to see how far God has brought you. But shame is a dangerous thing, my son. Don't let it make you forget who you are. Ajani said nothing. He just turned his face away. His father sighed deeply. When your mother was in labor, she almost died trying to give you life. Now look how she trembles just to speak to you. Then, with slow steps, the old man walked away, leaving Ajani alone with the echo of his words. Ajani sat down, his drink untouched. The silence in the mansion felt heavier than any insult. Outside the guest room door, Mama Ajani was quietly crying into her pillow. Morning sunlight crept through the golden blinds of Ajani's mansion. The air smelled of imported coffee and new money. His phone buzzed beside his bed. Another message from the event planner reminding him about the investors' brunch. He rubbed his temples. He hadn't slept well. His father's words from the night before echoed in his mind. Shame is a dangerous thing, my son. Don't let it make you forget who you are. But he pushed the thought away. I'm doing this for appearances, he told himself. No one wants to do business with a man who looks like he came from a mud house. He stood, buttoned his designer shirt, and walked out of his room. The scent of fried plantain drifted from the kitchen, his mother's cooking. He frowned immediately. As he stepped into the kitchen, he saw her standing beside the stove, humming an old Yoruba gospel song. Mama, he said sharply, I told the chef to handle breakfast. Mama Ajani turned with a smile. Good morning, my son. I just wanted to make your favorite. Remember how you used to say my dodo gives you energy for exams? Ajani forced a laugh. Yes, but things are different now. We have a professional chef. She looked at him softly. My food is not professional. His chest tightened. That's not what I mean, just that we have to keep the house organized. People might come in any time. She wiped her hands on her wrapper and nodded quietly. I understand. But as he turned to leave, she added gently, even a tree with golden leaves should not forget the soil that fed its roots. Her words stung. He didn't reply. He just walked out quickly. Downstairs, his assistant, Teo, was already waiting in the living room, scrolling through his tablet. Boss, the investors from London are arriving in an hour, Teo said. Should I tell the security to use the main entrance only? Yes, Ajani said. And make sure the old couple stays inside. No wandering around. Teo blinked. The old couple? My parents. Oh. Teo hesitated, then added carefully, You mean the elderly people I saw yesterday near the kitchen? I didn't know they were your parents. Ajani's face hardened. Yes, and let's keep it that way. No need for anyone to know, understood? Teo nodded slowly, though a trace of disappointment flickered in his eyes. An hour later, shiny cars filled the driveway. The living room sparkled with glass, marble, and quiet music. Men in suits and women in business dresses shook hands and laughed. "Welcome to Allowale Holdings," Ajani said proudly, shaking the hand of Mr. Clark, the British investor. "Beautiful place, Ajani," Clark exclaimed. "I see you come from good taste." Ajani smiled tightly. "Thank you. Everything here represents the standard I was raised with." Just as the words left his mouth, a soft cough came from behind. Everyone turned. Standing at the edge of the hallway was Mama Ajani, holding a tray of fruit. She looked proud and nervous at the same time. "I brought something for your guests, my son," she said with a gentle smile. Ajani's face turned pale. He rushed to her side. "Mama, please, you shouldn't be here." "But they're your guests, Ajani," she said, still smiling. "I only want to greet them." Mr. Clark chuckled kindly. "Ah, this must be your mother. Lovely woman." But before Ajani could speak, one of the Nigerian partners whispered loudly, "Wait, is this the same old woman I saw in a taxi outside yesterday?" The laughter that followed was quiet but sharp, slicing through Ajani's chest. He forced another smile, his throat dry. "She's an old family helper. Very loyal." Mama Ajani froze. Her eyes widened in disbelief. For a moment, the room went still. Even the investors sensed the tension, their laughter fading into an awkward silence. She whispered faintly, "Helper." Ajani swallowed hard, unable to meet her eyes. "Mama, please, not now." She stared at him, her lips trembling, then placed the tray down and walked away, her back slightly bent, her wrapper dragging against the marble floor. No one said a word. Later that evening, when the guests had gone, the mansion was quiet again. Only the sound of the fountain outside could be heard. Ajani poured himself a drink, staring at his reflection in the glass door. His father stepped out from the guest room, wearing an old brown sweater. "So, we are helpers now," Baba Ajani said softly. Ajani turned. "Papa, please." "No, let me talk," his father said calmly. "I watched you today. The way you looked at your mother. The way you spoke. You wore your shame like perfume." Ajani's hands shook slightly. "Papa, you don't understand. These people judge by image. If they know I came from the kind of place we lived in, they will respect you even more," his father interrupted. "Because you rose from nothing without stealing. You worked hard, my son, but pride has blinded you." Ajani's voice cracked. "Papa, I just want them to see me as equal, not as that poor boy from Irepadon." His father's eyes softened. "The world will never stop seeing your roots, Ajani. But that's not a curse. It's your crown." Ajani looked away, his throat tight. That night, as the rain began to fall softly outside, Mama Ajani sat on the bed, coughing weakly. Her hands were shaking. She whispered to her husband, "He called me a helper." Baba Ajani wrapped his arm around her shoulders. "He's lost in pride. But maybe one day, life will remind him what truly matters." In another room, Ajani tossed restlessly on his bed. The mansion felt too quiet, too empty, even with all its lights and luxury. He scrolled through old pictures on his phone, photos of him as a child, sitting beside his mother in front of their mud house, smiling with half-eaten mangoes. He quickly locked the screen, as if ashamed to see himself that way. The rain outside grew heavier, tapping on the windows like tiny knocks from his past. But Ajani didn't open the window. He just lay there, staring at the ceiling, pretending not to hear. Do you think money can ever make someone ashamed of their parents? Drop your opinion below. Let's talk about this. The next morning came with a stormy sky. Clouds hung heavy over the mansion, and thunder rolled softly in the distance. Ajani sat in the living room, scrolling through his phone, half listening to his friends as they joked about last night's party. There were 4 of them. Tio, his assistant, Raymond, a fellow businessman, and 2 ladies dressed in expensive designer clothes. The smell of perfume mixed with the aroma of imported coffee. Raymond laughed loudly. "My guy, that old woman from yesterday, was she really your house help? The way she was shaking when she brought that tray in, I nearly pitied her." The group laughed. Ajani forced a chuckle, though his chest tightened. "Yeah, she's, someone from the village. You know, sentimental kind of person. Doesn't know how to act around rich people." One of the women giggled. "Ah, so you keep your village staff close. That's cute. Ajani smiled weakly. Something like that. But just as the laughter rose again, a soft sound came from behind the curtain. A faint cough. Ajani froze. He turned slowly, and his heart stopped. Standing at the archway was Mama Ajani, her wrapper tied loosely, her eyes red from crying. The room went silent. Mama, Ajani whispered, rising to his feet. Her voice trembled, but carried strength. Village staff. Ajani opened his mouth, but no words came out. Her face broke into pain. So, that is what I am to you now? A staff. Raymond stood awkwardly, clearing his throat. Maybe we should sit down, she said firmly, her tone sharper than they'd ever heard. Everyone obeyed without knowing why. She turned to her son. When I was in labor, Ajani, there was no doctor in our village. Your father used his last money to hire a midwife. I almost died trying to bring you into this world. I carried you on my back through rain and hunger just so you could go to school. I washed people's clothes. I sold Accra under the sun so you could have a future. And now you stand here calling me staff? Her voice cracked on the last word, and her tears fell freely. Ajani's throat burned. Mama, please, you don't understand. I understand everything, she said bitterly. You are ashamed of us. You think our poverty makes you look small. But let me tell you something, my son. Your riches mean nothing if you lose your heart along the way. The silence that followed was thick enough to cut. Raymond and the others looked uncomfortable. Teo lowered his eyes, unable to look at his boss. Ajani's lips trembled. Mama, it's not like that. You embarrass me when you appear suddenly. I was just trying to protect your image, she interrupted sharply. You are protecting a lie. She looked around the glittering mansion, her voice softening but still strong. All this beauty means nothing when the soul of the house is rotten. I thought you built this place to honor us, but you build it to hide your shame. Her words cut deeper than any blade. Ajani's vision blurred with tears, but pride held them back. Enough, Mama, he said, trying to steady his voice. Please go to your room. We'll talk later. She stared at him one last time. You're no longer the boy I raised. The Ajani I knew would rather go hungry than disrespect his parents. She turned and walked away, her steps slow but filled with dignity. The door to the guest room closed gently behind her. For a while, no one spoke. Then Raymond muttered, Bro, that's your mother? Ajani didn't answer. God, Teo said quietly, that was harsh. You can't treat her like that, man. No amount of money is worth that kind of pain. Ajani's eyes flashed with anger. You don't know what it's like to build everything from nothing. Teo, you don't know how these people judge you when they see where you came from. But those people you're trying to impress will forget you the moment you lose your money, Teo replied calmly. Your mother won't. She never did. Ajani clenched his fists. Just leave me alone. The others quietly excused themselves. Within minutes, the mansion was silent again. That evening, the storm broke. Rain pounded the windows, and lightning flashed across the dark sky. Ajani sat alone in his study, staring at an old photo frame on his desk. Him, as a small boy sitting between his parents, smiling proudly with a certificate in his hand. He remembered the day like yesterday. His mother had danced in the rain after his school prize giving, shouting to neighbors, My son will be great. My son will build the future. He had laughed and hugged her, not caring that their clothes were soaked. Now, staring at the same face in the photo, he felt something heavy twisting inside him. A knock came at the door. Come in, he said, his voice tired. It was Teo again, holding a tray of food. Sir, I noticed he didn't eat dinner. Should I? Ajani waved him off. Leave it there. As Teo turned to leave, he paused. Your mother fainted earlier. The housekeeper called the doctor. Ajani's head snapped up. What? She collapsed while praying in the room. The doctor is with her now. Ajani jumped from his chair, his heart racing. Why didn't anyone tell me sooner? He ran through the hallway, nearly slipping on the wet tiles. When he burst into the guest room, he saw his mother lying weakly on the bed, her skin pale. Baba Ajani sat beside her, holding her hand and whispering softly. The doctor stood at the corner, packing his tools. She's been under a lot of emotional stress, he said. Her blood pressure is very high. She needs rest and peace. Ajani swallowed hard. Will she be okay? She will, if she avoids more heartache. The doctor gave him a long look before walking out. Ajani knelt beside the bed. Mama, her eyes fluttered open weakly. Ajani, tears rolled down his cheeks. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you. She smiled faintly. You didn't hurt me, my son. You hurt yourself. Her hand trembled as she touched his face. When shame becomes stronger than love, a man is already poor again. Then she closed her eyes to rest. Ajani sat there, holding her hand, his tears falling onto her wrapper. That night, he couldn't sleep. He walked to the balcony, staring out at the city lights. Cars honked in the distance, rain splashing against the glass. For the first time, he felt the weight of his wealth pressing down like a curse. His father's voice broke the silence. She's sleeping now, Baba, Ajani said softly, stepping beside him. But her heart is tired. Ajani wiped his eyes. I never wanted this to happen. I just didn't want people to laugh at me. Baba, Ajani sighed. When you were a boy, we used to walk to school through the mud. You'd hold my hand and say, Papa, one day I'll buy you shoes so your feet never touch dirt again. Remember that? Ajani nodded weakly. Well, his father said, you kept your promise. You bought me shoes, but you forgot to keep your heart clean. Ajani broke down. Papa, what do I do now? Start by not being ashamed of us, his father said simply. You can build another company, another house, but not another mother. Ajani looked away, his chest heaving with guilt. I'll make it right, he whispered. I'll make everything right. But deep down, he didn't know how. The night was calm again, but the mansion felt empty. Ajani sat alone beside his mother's bed, watching her breathe softly. The oxygen machine hummed faintly, and every blink of the green light felt like a heartbeat counting his guilt. He reached for her hand, rough from years of labor. His fingers traced the old scars on her palm, memories carved into skin. And as he sat there, memories began to flood his mind like an old movie playing behind his eyes. Flashback, years ago. The year was 2003. A hot afternoon in Irepadun village, Kwara State. A young boy, barefoot and hungry, ran along the dusty road holding a torn exercise book. His uniform was faded, and his school bag was a plastic nylon tied with rope. That boy was Ajani, only 10 years old. Mama, I got first position again, he shouted, running toward the small mud house at the end of the road. His mother looked up from the firewood stove, her face sweaty but glowing with pride. My son, first position again? Ah, God is good. She lifted him into her arms, spinning him around though her body ached. See your head, just like your papa's, she laughed. His father, Baba Ajani, stepped out from behind the house, holding a hoe. If this boy doesn't become governor one day, I will ask God why. They all laughed. It was the laughter of people who had nothing but each other. But behind that laughter, reality bit deep. The next morning, school fees were due. Ajani sat outside the house, polishing his only pair of sandals. Mama, he said quietly, teacher said if I don't bring my fees tomorrow, I shouldn't come back. Her hands froze where she was washing clothes in a basin. And how much, she asked. 2,000 naira. Her face fell. That was more money than she had in the house. That night, she couldn't sleep. She sat by the lantern, staring at Ajani's sleeping face. His small body curled on the mat, his hand clutching his exercise book even in sleep. Her husband came out, rubbing his eyes. You're still awake? She whispered school fees. He sighed deeply. We'll find a way. The next morning, Baba Ajani went to the farm early, carrying his hoe and a broken cutlass. The soil was dry, but he worked until his palms bled. At sunset, he walked to the village market. I want to sell my radio, he told the trader. The trader laughed. That old thing? I'll give you 1,000. Take it, he said quietly. My boy must go to school. When he came home, he placed the crumpled notes in his wife's hand. She looked at him, tears in her eyes. But this is only half. He smiled faintly. I'll go to the carpenter tomorrow. Maybe he needs a helper. That night, Mama Ajani prayed aloud. God, if it is my blood that will open the door for my son's future, take it. Ajani heard her voice in his sleep and smiled, not knowing what her words meant. Weeks passed. The struggle never ended. One evening, Rain started to fall heavily. Their roof leaked badly, water dripping onto their floor. Ajani sat in a corner, reading with a candle covered by an empty bottle to keep the flame alive. His mother coughed hard, wrapping herself in an old shawl. Ajani, sleep now. Tomorrow is exam day. I want to finish this last page, he said, eyes determined. His father looked at him proudly. This boy is fire. When the candle went out, his mother gave him the lantern she used for cooking. Take it, my son. You need the light more than I do. The next morning, Ajani wrote his exams and scored highest in the district. A teacher from the city visited their school and said, "This boy deserves a scholarship." But the scholarship didn't cover everything. He still needed transport, uniform, and books. So Mama Ajani began waking up at 4 a.m. every day, frying puff-puff and accurate to sell at the roadside. Her hands burned often, oil splashing on her skin. But she never complained. When customers mocked her for her old wrapper, she only smiled. "My son will wear a suit one day," she would say, "and he will speak in places my voice cannot reach." As Ajani grew older, their sacrifices grew heavier. He gained admission to university, a dream come true, but the fees were far beyond what they could afford. The night he brought the admission letter home, his mother cried with joy and fear. "How will we pay?" she whispered to her husband. "I will find a way," Baba Ajani said. The next morning, he went to the village head and offered to mortgage their only piece of land, the small farm they depended on. The old man frowned. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure," he said firmly. "If my son becomes something great, 1 acre of land is a small sacrifice." And he did it. He gave up the land, and with the money, they sent Ajani to the city. University life was tough for Ajani. He had no laptop, no fancy clothes. He sold phone recharge cards after lectures. But he was smart. His lecturers admired him. Every semester, his mother sent him small envelopes with notes. "Use this for food, my son. Your father and I are praying for you. Don't forget where you came from." He kept those notes in a small box beside his bed. Years later, when he graduated with first-class honors, his parents traveled overnight in a crowded bus just to attend the ceremony. They arrived late, clothes wrinkled, faces dusty from the road. But when Ajani's name was called, his mother screamed from the back, "That's my son." The whole hall laughed affectionately. Ajani smiled, waving at them with tears in his eyes. At that moment, he promised himself he would build them a mansion one day. Back to present. Ajani blinked as the memories faded. The room came back into focus, the machines, the soft hum, the quiet breathing of his mother. He wiped his face. His tears had soaked the bedsheet. How could he have forgotten all of that? How could he forget the hands that carried him through hunger and storms? He whispered, "Mama." "I remember now." Just then, Baba Ajani entered the room quietly. He saw the tears on his son's face and said nothing. Ajani looked up. "Papa, you sold the farm to pay my school fees, didn't you?" The old man smiled gently. "Yes, it was worth it. Look at you now." Ajani shook his head. "No, Papa. You lost your land, your comfort, for me. And I used that success to build a wall between us." His father sighed. "We didn't want repayment, Ajani. We wanted gratitude." Ajani fell to his knees beside him. "I'll make it right. I swear I'll make it right." Baba Ajani placed his hand on his son's shoulder. "It's never too late to do good, my son. But start with humility." That night, Ajani sat outside under the veranda, listening to the soft chirping of crickets. He stared at the stars and whispered a prayer for forgiveness. He picked up his phone and opened a blank message draft to his business partners. Tomorrow's board meeting postponed indefinitely. Family emergency. For the first time, work didn't matter. He decided that the next day, he would drive his parents back to the village himself, not to hide them, but to rebuild what he had destroyed. He would return to the soil that gave him life. He would start again, not as Ajani the billionaire, but as Ajani, son of Baba and Mama Alawale. Do you believe a parent's sacrifice can shape a child's destiny forever? Drop a red heart in the comments if you're grateful for your parents today. Morning light spilled through the glass walls of Ajani's mansion. It should have been a peaceful day. Birds chirped outside, the fountain bubbled softly, and the city breeze whispered through the curtains. But something fell off. His phone buzzed nonstop. Dozens of missed calls, urgent messages. He frowned as he picked it up. "Sir, we have a problem." His finance manager's voice burst through the line. "What problem?" Ajani asked sharply. "Foreign investors have withdrawn their funds. The stock dropped by 22% overnight. There's also a report trending on social media. Something about insider dealings." Ajani's blood ran cold. "What?" He turned on the TV. The headline hit like thunder. "Breaking news. Allowale Holdings under investigation for financial mismanagement." Pictures of his company logo flashed across the screen, followed by clips of angry staff outside his Lagos office, shouting, "We want our pay." His hands began to shake. This couldn't be happening. He grabbed his car keys and rushed out, ignoring his mother's weak voice from the room. "Ajani, eat first, my son." But he was already gone. Traffic along Ikoyi Bridge crawled, horns blaring. By the time he reached his office, security men were struggling to control the crowd of journalists. "Mr. Ajani, is it true you forged the board's signatures? Are you hiding investors' funds abroad? Why did your CFO resign suddenly?" He pushed through them, sweat pouring down his neck. Inside the building, the atmosphere was chaos. Papers scattered, staff whispering, some already packing their things. Teo ran toward him, breathless. "Boss, it's bad. The auditors froze our main account. The Federal Financial Unit just sent a notice. They're coming for a full investigation." Ajani's mind spun. "Where's the legal team?" "They resigned this morning." "What?" Teo's voice trembled. "They don't want to be associated with the case." Ajani slammed his desk with his fist. "No, I built this from scratch. I worked for this. I didn't do anything wrong." Teo looked at him sadly. "Sometimes the wrong isn't in what we did, but in what we ignored." "What's that supposed to mean?" Ajani snapped. Teo hesitated. "You trusted the wrong people, sir. You were so focused on image that you didn't see what was happening inside. Pride made you blind." Ajani stared at him, chest heaving. The words hit deep, like his father's warning echoing back from the past. By evening, Ajani's name was trending online. Hashtag Allowale collapse. Hashtag from riches to ruin. Clients canceled contracts. The government issued a probe. And that same night, his phone stopped ringing, as if the whole world had suddenly gone silent. He sat in his dark office long, after everyone left, staring at the city lights. He remembered his mother's words. "When shame becomes stronger than love, a man is already poor again." He realized he had become that man. When he returned home, it was raining heavily. His shoes splashed through puddles as he walked to the gate. The mansion that once looked like paradise now felt like a prison. Inside, the generator hummed softly. The lights flickered. He entered the living room and dropped his briefcase with a loud thud. Baba Ajani sat quietly on the couch, reading an old Bible. Without looking up, his father said, "The news reached the village already." Ajani froze. "Papa." The old man closed the book gently. "You built your house on sand, my son. Wind has come, and the sand is washing away." Ajani sat down beside him, exhausted. "I didn't steal, Papa. I swear. Someone framed me." "I know," his father said simply. "But when you chase pride, enemies hide in your shadow." Ajani's eyes burned. "Everything I worked for is gone." "Not everything," Baba Ajani said softly. "Your mother still breathes. That means you still have something worth fighting for." At that moment, a weak voice called from the hallway. "Ajani." He turned quickly. His mother stood there, supported by the wall, her wrapper hanging loosely. He rushed to her. "Mama, you shouldn't be walking." She smiled faintly. "I heard what's happening. Sit, my son." He obeyed quietly, helping her to a chair. She placed her frail hand on his. "You have lost money, yes. But maybe God is showing you what truly matters. You built a kingdom of glass, beautiful but easy to break." Ajani's tears flowed freely now. "Mama, I thought success would bring peace." "Peace doesn't live in big houses," she said gently. "It lives in grateful hearts." That night, Ajani went to his room but couldn't sleep. He opened his laptop, scrolling through the financial reports, seeing gaps, forged signatures, and fake receipts his CFO had created. "How did I not see this?" he thought, slamming the laptop shut. His phone buzzed again, a call from an unknown number. He hesitated, then answered. Mr. Allowale, this is Inspector Raji from EFCC. We'll need you to report to our office tomorrow morning by 9 a.m. for questioning. Ajani closed his eyes. Understood. When he hung up, he whispered, God, I can't do this alone. By dawn, he was sitting outside in the compound, the cold air brushing against his skin. His mother woke up early and joined him quietly. For a long time, they said nothing. Only the sound of birds filled the silence. Finally, she spoke softly. You remember when you were small, and we used to fetch water from the stream? He smiled faintly. Yes, Mama. You used to carry 2 buckets while I carried 1 small can. She nodded. And when I got tired, you'd say, let me help you, Mama, even though you were just a boy. That was the spirit of love, not pride. That's the spirit you've lost. He bowed his head, ashamed. She touched his shoulder. God will break a man to rebuild him better. Maybe this is your breaking. Ajani looked up, eyes red. What if I lose everything? She smiled softly. Then you will finally see what you still have. Later that day, the news grew worse. Government agents sealed 2 of his companies. His car dealership partner pulled out. Even his mansion was rumored to be under review for tax fraud, though he had no idea how. By noon, Ajani's phone stopped ringing completely. Not even Teo picked his calls. He sat on the floor of his living room, surrounded by silence and regret. He whispered, I used to have so many friends. Now, not one remains. His father appeared in the doorway. When money leaves, fake love leaves too. Ajani's chest tightened. I don't even know who to trust anymore. His father came closer, placing a hand on his shoulder. Trust the ones who stayed when you had nothing. That's the real test of love. Ajani looked up at him, and for the first time, truly saw his parents not as poor villagers, but as giants who had carried him his whole life. That evening, his mother asked him to join her in prayer. They sat together on the bed, hands clasped. Her voice was weak but steady. Father, if this storm is your way of humbling my son, then let it wash away everything that is false in his life. But please, Lord, leave him with peace. Amen. Ajani's voice cracked as he said, Amen. When he opened his eyes, tears streamed down his face. He realized that even in her weakness, his mother was still fighting for him, the same way she had when he was a boy. That night, as he lay on the couch, unable to sleep, thunder rolled again in the sky. He got up, went to his mother's room, and quietly tucked the blanket tighter around her. She smiled in her sleep. He stood there for a moment, whispering, I don't deserve you, Mama. Then he walked to the window, staring out into the rain. The city lights shimmered like broken diamonds, beautiful but fading. And deep inside, Ajani knew this was only the beginning of his downfall or his rebirth. Do you believe karma always finds prideful people? Comment yes if you believe life always balances the scales. Morning broke slowly over Lagos. The rain had stopped, but the air still smelled of wet dust and silence. Ajani hadn't slept all night. He sat on the couch in the living room, his face buried in his hands, surrounded by unopened envelopes and half-empty cups of coffee. Every sound felt distant. The ticking clock, the hum of the fridge, his father's quiet movements in the kitchen. Then came a knock on the door. Come in, Ajani said weakly. Teo stepped in, eyes tired, his shirt untucked. Boss, I came to return this, he said, placing a flash drive on the table. What's that? Ajani asked. It's from the CFO's laptop. Before the investigation started, I copied some files. You might want to see what's inside. Ajani frowned. Why are you giving me this now? Teo hesitated. Because you need to know the truth. I was scared before, but not anymore. You deserve to see everything. He turned to leave, but Ajani stopped him. Teo, thank you. When the door closed, Ajani stared at the flash drive for a long time before plugging it into his laptop. The truth unfolds. At first, only spreadsheets and invoices appeared, ordinary numbers. But then he opened a folder titled Foundation Funding. There were scanned documents, stamped and signed. At the top of each, land collateral, Allowale Family Farm, 2005. Johnny's hands began to shake. He clicked again. A letter appeared, addressed to the bank. To whom it may concern, I, Mr. Allowale Samuel Baba Johnny, hereby pledge my inherited farmland as collateral to support my son's first business loan. I understand that failure to repay within 3 years will result in permanent forfeiture of the property. The date hit him like lightning. 2005. That was the year he had borrowed money to start his tech company. The year he told everyone an angel investor helped him. But that angel was his father. His vision blurred as tears filled his eyes. He scrolled further. There was also a recorded audio file labeled Voice Note, Papa. He pressed play. My son will not know I did this. He will think it was luck. But one day, if God wishes, he will understand. I did not have riches to give him, but I can give him the soil that raised me. Let him build his dream, even if I lose mine. Johnny covered his mouth, shaking. The room spun around him. He whispered, Papa, you gave up everything, and I repaid you with shame. He closed the laptop and buried his face in his hands, crying until his chest ached. The confrontation. That evening, he walked slowly to the veranda where his father sat sharpening an old cutlass. The orange sun painted the sky, and birds flew home in flocks. Johnny stood for a while before speaking. Papa, why didn't you tell me? The old man didn't look up. Tell you what, that you mortgaged the farm to fund my business. Silence. Then Baba Johnny sighed deeply. So you finally found out. Johnny's voice cracked. Why, Papa? Why didn't you tell me? I could have paid you back years ago. His father smiled faintly. If I told you, would you still have worked as hard? Or would you have felt you already owed a debt you could never repay? Johnny's throat tightened. You risked everything for me. That farm was all you had. Baba Johnny looked out at the fading light. A father's land is not his wealth. His child is. I gave up the soil so you could rise above it. Johnny knelt beside him. But now everything is gone. The company, the investors, the fame. I failed you. The old man placed his hand on his shoulder. You didn't fail me, Johnny. You only lost your way for a while. Tears filled Johnny's eyes. I called you poor. I made you and Mama sleep in the guest room like strangers. And still, you prayed for me. His father smiled sadly. Because a parent's prayer doesn't depend on a child's behavior. It depends on love. Johnny broke down completely, holding his father's knees. I'm sorry, Papa. I'm so sorry. Baba Johnny raised him gently. If apology could heal wounds, the world would have no scars. But repentance changes everything. A mother's wisdom. Later that night, Johnny entered his mother's room quietly. She was sitting up, reading her small Bible with her glasses perched on her nose. He sat at her bedside, eyes swollen. Mama, she looked up, smiling faintly. My son, you've been crying. He nodded. I found out what Papa did. I can't believe it. She closed the Bible softly. You were always his dream, Johnny. Every hoe he lifted on that farm, he was planting seeds for you. Johnny's voice shook. But why didn't either of you tell me? Because love doesn't boast, she said. And sometimes silence is a sacrifice too. He held her hand. Mama, I'll fix everything. I'll clear the debt. I'll rebuild the farm. I'll make you proud again. She smiled, brushing his cheek with her frail fingers. We were already proud the day you took your first step, Johnny. We only wanted your heart to stay soft. Her eyes glistened. God will humble a man only to raise him higher, but not with money this time, with wisdom. Johnny bowed his head. Then let him rebuild me. Karma's lesson. The next day, Johnny went to the EFCC office for questioning. He sat before the investigators for hours, answering every question honestly. When it ended, the lead officer said quietly, Mr. Allowale, from the evidence, it seems your CFO embezzled the funds under your name. You'll be cleared soon, but it may take months to rebuild your reputation. Johnny nodded. I understand. Walking out of that office, the sun felt warmer than it had in weeks. He didn't care about the headlines anymore. He didn't care about luxury. He just wanted peace, returning to the roots. 2 weeks later, Johnny packed a few bags into his SUV. His mother was stronger now, smiling again. His father looked healthier too. Mama, Papa, he said softly, let's go home. They looked at him in surprise. Home? Yes. To Irepidon. The city took too much from me. It's time I give something back. The drive was long, but peaceful. As the car rolled into the village, familiar faces waved. Children ran after the car, shouting, Uncle Ajani Don Kamo. He smiled for the first time in months. They arrived at the empty land where their old farm once stood. The soil was cracked and dry, but Ajani knelt and pressed his hand against it. This was the beginning, he whispered. His father smiled, and it will be the beginning again. Ajani stood and looked at the horizon. I'll rebuild it, Papa. A new foundation, one that feeds people, not egos. That evening, they sat outside the small village house, sharing roasted corn. The sunset painted everything gold. Mama Ajani laughed softly. See how the air here smells of peace. Not like that air conditioner in Lagos. Ajani chuckled. You're right, Mama. His father leaned back. You finally found rest, my son. Ajani nodded. Yes, Papa, because I finally found truth. The three of them sat there quietly, watching the sky turn purple. And for the first time in a long time, Ajani felt rich again, not in money, but in meaning. If your parents ever made silent sacrifices for you, type, I love you, Mama and Papa in the comments. Let's fill the chat with gratitude today. The sun had barely risen when Ajani sat by the window of the old family house in Irepidon village. The morning breeze carried the smell of wet soil and roasted yam from a nearby stall. It was peaceful, the kind of peace money could never buy. But inside him, a storm still brewed. Even though the investigations had cleared him of the fraud allegations, the damage to his name was done. His company had fallen. His friends had disappeared. And the glittering mansion in Lagos was now an empty shell, a place he no longer called home. He took a deep breath and whispered, This is the price of pride, a humble return. That afternoon, Ajani walked through the village with his father. Children ran past, shouting, Uncle Ajani Don come. Old women waved from their stalls. He smiled gently and greeted everyone. The villagers had followed the story on the news. They had seen his rise and his fall. Yet none mocked him. They welcomed him like a lost son who finally came home. At the small community square, Baba Ajani introduced him to the elders. This is my son, he said proudly, the one who once forgot his roots, but has found them again. The elders nodded wisely. An old man, Pa Dada, touched Ajani's shoulder. The soil forgives the farmer who returns, he said. You have come back to the land that gave you life. Use your wisdom now to lift others. Ajani bowed respectfully. Thank you, sir. I will. The plan. Later that evening, Ajani gathered a few young men and women under the mango tree near their old farm. I want to start something new, he told them. Not a big company this time, but a community farm. We'll grow crops, teach people modern farming, and use part of the profit to fund children's education. The villagers stared at him in surprise. One of the boys, Sei, asked, But sir, you were a billionaire before. You want to do farming? Ajani smiled faintly. Yes, because now I know the true wealth isn't in money. It's in purpose. The crowd clapped softly. Someone shouted, God bless you, Ajani. Mama Ajani, sitting under the tree with her walking stick, smiled proudly. For the first time, she saw her son not as the arrogant man from Lagos, but as the humble boy she once raised. Facing the city, 2 weeks later, Ajani returned briefly to Lagos for a charity event. He wanted to face the people who had mocked him, not with anger, but with grace. As he stepped out of his car at the event hall, cameras flashed again, just like before. But this time, there was no expensive suit, no bodyguards, no fake smile. He wore a simple native attire, white agbada with brown sandals. Reporters rushed toward him. Mr. Allowale, how does it feel to lose your billionaire empire? Do you regret your choices? Is it true you're now living in the village? He paused and looked straight into the cameras. Yes, he said calmly. I lost my company, my friends, and my reputation. But I found something far greater, humility. I found my parents again. I found peace. The reporters fell silent. He continued, If success makes you forget the people who raised you, that success is a curse, not a blessing. I learned that the hard way. Then he smiled faintly and walked past them, leaving the crowd speechless. The apology. That evening, he visited a TV studio that once hosted him during his billionaire days. The same presenter, Madame Rose, welcomed him with a warm but curious smile. "Mr. Allowale," she said, "the last time you sat here, you told Nigerians that hard work and vision made you successful. What do you think made you fall?" Ajani leaned forward. His voice was calm, steady. "Pride," he said. "I thought my success made me better than others. I forgot the people who built me. I was ashamed of my roots, ashamed of the same parents who gave everything for me." Madame Rose's eyes softened. "And now," he smiled sadly, "now I see that money without love is poverty in disguise." The studio went quiet. Even the crew looked moved. He added softly, "I want to dedicate the rest of my life to building hope, especially for parents who sacrifice in silence." The presenter nodded, visibly touched. "Thank you, Mr. Allowale. I think your story will teach many people what true wealth means." Rebuilding trust. In the weeks that followed, clips of his interview went viral online. People who once mocked him now left messages of respect. One comment read, "This man lost millions but gained wisdom. May God bless him." Another said, "I watched this with tears. It reminded me of my own mother. I'll call her tonight." Soon, journalists began visiting the village to document his new project, the Allowale Foundation for Rural Growth. Ajani used his remaining savings to buy simple tools, seedlings, and irrigation pipes. He worked side by side with farmers, his once soft palms now rough again. The villagers called him Baba Farm. He laughed every time he heard it. The test. But not everyone was happy. One afternoon, a sleek black car pulled up beside the farm. It was Raymond, his old business friend, the same one who had mocked his mother that day in a mansion. He stepped out wearing sunglasses and a gold watch. "Ajani, my man," he shouted, grinning. Ajani wiped his sweat and smiled faintly. "Raymond, long time." Raymond looked around the field, unimpressed. "So this is what you're doing now? Farming?" "Yes," Ajani said simply. Raymond chuckled. "Bro, come on. I'm back in business. I can bring you in. One call, and you'll be on top again. You can't waste your talent here in the bush." Ajani smiled. "This bush taught me what money never could." Raymond frowned. "You've changed." "Yes," Ajani replied. "For the first time, I changed in the right direction." Raymond shook his head and walked away, muttering, "You'll regret this." Ajani looked at the horizon, whispering, "I already did. That's why I'm done chasing shadows." A son's redemption. That night, Ajani sat outside with his parents again. The stars blinked softly in the dark sky. Mama Ajani broke the silence. "You spoke well to that man today. I heard everything." Ajani chuckled. "You were listening?" She smiled. "A mother always listens." Baba Ajani nodded proudly. "I used to think you were successful because of your degrees. But now I see success is in the heart, not the pocket." Ajani looked at them both, emotion rising in his chest. "I wish I could undo the pain I caused you," he said quietly. His mother placed her hand on his. "Pain is part of love, my son. If you've learned from it, then it wasn't wasted." Tears filled his eyes. "I'll spend the rest of my life honoring you both." His father smiled. "Then you've already won." They sat there in silence, the sound of crickets filling the night. For the first time since his fall, Ajani felt completely free, a symbol of renewal. Weeks later, the community farm produced its first harvest. Children and elders gathered as baskets of maize, tomatoes, and yam filled the yard. Ajani held one maize cob high and said, "This is not my victory, it's our victory." The crowd cheered. Mama Ajani wiped her eyes with a wrapper. "See my son," she whispered to her husband. "From shame to blessing." Baba Ajani smiled. He finally became the man we prayed for. As the villagers sang and danced, Ajani looked up at the sky and whispered, "Thank you, God, for breaking me so you could rebuild me right." Do you believe regret can make someone a better person? Comment yes if you've ever learned the hard way like Ajani. The morning sun rose slowly over Irepidun village, painting the sky in gold and orange. The sound of distant church bells mixed with laughter from the village square, where Ajani's community farm was holding its first charity harvest event. Women carried baskets of fresh corn, cassava, and vegetables, singing as they worked. Children danced barefoot on the dusty ground. In the center of it all stood a Johnny, no longer the proud billionaire in suits, but a man reborn in humility. He wore a simple white caftan and slippers. His once shiny wristwatch was gone. In its place was a rope bracelet made by a village child. Mama Ajani sat proudly under a canopy, her head wrapped in colorful ankara, her eyes glowing with joy. Baba Ajani sat beside her, smiling like a king who had seen his dynasty restored. The ceremony of gratitude. When the songs quieted, Ajani climbed onto a small wooden stage. The crowd clapped and cheered. He raised the microphone. "My people," he began softly, "I once thought wealth was about money. I thought respect came from cars and mansions. But today I know real wealth lives in the heart." The crowd murmured in agreement. He continued, "Years ago, I made a terrible mistake. I was ashamed of my parents because they were poor. I made them sleep in the guest room of my mansion, as if love needed luxury to be respected. But God humbled me. He took away what blinded me, so I could see again." His voice broke. "If not for my father's quiet sacrifice and my mother's endless prayers, I would be nothing today." He turned toward them. "Mama, Papa, please come up here." The crowd erupted in applause as the old couple slowly climbed the small stage, supported by the villagers. Ajani knelt before them, microphone trembling in his hand. "I brought you shame," he said, tears running freely. "But you gave me grace. I pushed you away, but you never stopped loving me. I was proud of money. Now I am proud of you." Mama Ajani's hand shook as she placed him on his head. "My son," she whispered, "you were lost, but now you are found. That is enough for a mother's heart." Baba Ajani raised his hands and prayed loudly. "May your new beginning never end. May your name rise again, but this time built on truth." The crowd shouted, "Amen." So people wept openly. A seed of hope. After the prayers, Ajani turned back to the villagers. "From today," he said, "the Allowell Foundation will not only farm food, it will plant futures. Every season, part of our harvest will go to fund education for children from poor families." The crowd cheered even louder. Children jumped in excitement. Mama Ajani laughed through tears. "You see, Samuel," she said to her husband, "the seed we planted has finally grown." Baba Ajani nodded proudly. Even in dry land, good seed will find a way. The return of the mansion. A few weeks later, Ajani received an unexpected letter. It was from one of his former investors, Mr. Clark, the British businessman who once attended his party. "Dear Ajani, I followed your story. You've inspired me more in your fall than you ever did in your success. I would like to support your new foundation and help rebuild your farm. Enclosed is a check to begin the expansion. Keep doing good. Clark." Ajani stared at the check in disbelief. It wasn't just a donation. It was enough to rebuild the old Lagos mansion and more. But this time he smiled and whispered, "No, I'll build schools instead." He cashed part of the money and immediately began construction of a free learning center beside the farm, naming it the Mama and Papa Allowell Academy for Hope. When the first block was completed, he invited his parents for the unveiling. Mama Ajani cried when she saw the signboard. "You used our names?" "Yes," Ajani said softly, "because everything I am began with you." The public forgiveness. Months later, Ajani received an invitation to speak at a national youth conference in Abuja. The theme was Rising After the Fall. Standing on stage before thousands of young Nigerians, he took a deep breath and told his story, the pride, the shame, the downfall, and the grace that followed. When he finished, the crowd stood and applauded. But Ajani raised his hand and said quietly, "Don't clap for me. Clap for every parent who still prays for their children even when those children forget them." The hall roared with emotion. Several people shouted, "God bless our mothers." Tears filled Ajani's eyes. He realized then that the purpose of his pain was to save others from repeating it. The homecoming miracle. One quiet Sunday morning, months after the speech, Ajani woke up early to check on the farm. He found his father sitting under the mango tree, smiling to himself. "Papa, you're up early," Ajani said, sitting beside him. His father nodded. "I was just thanking God. You remember the land we lost years ago?" Ajani nodded sadly. "Yes, the one you mortgaged for my business." His father pointed across the road. "The man's son who owned it came today. He said his late father left a note before dying, that if you ever returned, the land should be given back to our family." Ajani blinked in disbelief. "What? Are you serious?" Baba Ajani smiled. "It's yours again, my son. What was lost has been restored." Ajani fell to his knees, tears of joy streaming down his face. "God, you are faithful," he whispered. His mother came out of the house, holding her wrapper, confused. "What's going on?" Ajani hugged her tightly. "Mama, we got our land back." She gasped and began praising God loudly. "Jehovah, you do not sleep. You turn shame into testimony." Neighbors gathered, clapping and singing. The sound of drums echoed through the village. A full circle. Later that evening, the family stood together on the land. The same soil that once fed them when they were poor, the same land that was sacrificed to build Ajani's empire, was now returned to them. Ajani knelt and scooped a handful of earth in his palm. This time, he said softly, "I won't build walls. I'll build hearts." His father smiled. "And that is how wealth should end, by giving life to others." Mama Ajani looked at the sky. God waited for the right time to show his mercy. They all stood there silently, watching the sunset glow across the horizon. For the first time in his life, Ajani felt whole. No guilt, no shame, just peace. A message to the world. Months later, a documentary crew came to film his foundation's success story. They asked, if you could give one message to young people chasing success, what would it be? Ajani looked straight into the camera and said, "Never let success make you forget the people who prayed you into it. You can replace cars, houses, and jobs, but you can never replace your parents." Final scene. That night, as the moon rose over the farm, Ajani sat outside with his parents, sipping tea. The sound of crickets filled the air. His mother smiled softly. "Do you remember, my son, the night you read under that broken lantern?" He laughed. "Yes, Mama. You said one day I'd light the world." She nodded proudly. "You did. Not with electricity, but with your story." Ajani held her hand and whispered, "I love you, Mama. I love you, Papa." They both smiled. The stars shone brighter. The once proud billionaire who had lost everything now had everything that truly mattered: peace, purpose, and love. If this story touched your heart, type "Thank you, Mama and Papa" in the comments. Let's honor every parent who gave their all for their children. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story to remind someone that love is the real wealth.